Hello and welcome to Social Theory, Concepts and Debates. Today I am going to be talking about how the social becomes a category of analysis and how sociology emerges as a scientific discipline. Sociology emerges as a scientific discipline quite late, especially when compared to other disciplines like philosophy, astronomy and mathematics. And the social itself becomes a category of analysis quite late. Why is that so? Well, for once, the subject matter of sociology is social structures. And if we take social structures as something that is natural or God-given, divinely ordained, then how are we to study them? For us to be able to study social structures, we need to understand them as humanly constructed, as something that is open to critique and therefore amenable to change. This starts to happen something around the 16th century. First, the Protestant Reformation challenges the authority of the church. So far, the church has been all powerful, either the church or the monarchs that hold immense power, and it is almost understood as if the given hierarchies in society, as your place in society is where it is. There's nothing that can be changed about it. However, with the Enlightenment thinkers bringing in ideas about human reason and rationality, a lot of the way we think about ourselves and our role in society changes. For example, when ideas about reason come in, the notion that human beings can reason for themselves and therefore have the possibility of being able to chart their own course of action, to be able to make their own decisions, to be able to decide their own destiny. This is not something that kind of is God given. This was a very, very powerful idea that they can reason, that they can put forth rational thought, that we can know about the world through detailed, rigorous observations. Ideas about individual liberty. Individualism starts to emerge as a way of thinking, that we can think of ourselves as individuals that can work towards one's own betterment and the betterment of humanity. In fact, the fact that humans are able to reason becomes central to the argument that if we are able to reason, then we need to work towards creating a more just world, to be creating a more humane world. Alongside, in the 16th and the 17th century, scientific revolution gave the tools that enabled such thinking to flourish. It also enables, especially in the context of this class, the discipline of sociology to emerge, because it gave the tools that were needed for a scientific study of the social structures that we inhabit. So this belief in human intellect and reason allowed for discussions to emerge, allowed for a public to emerge. In this image that I have up here, you see the demonstration of the arts and sciences up in the open. You see a globe, you see the telescope. There are tools that have come in that give us a view of the world that is perhaps for the first time not that which is told in the scriptures. This is something that is emerging from observation. The notion of empiricism is very, very strong. In this very famous painting, An Experiment on a Bird in the Air Pump, we see people gathered to look at the creation of vacuum. Again, something that is observable, that is demonstratable. So the scientific method is coming to be developed. This scientific method plays a role in the development of sociology eventually. What the scientific revolution does for us is bring together the notion of empiricism with the idea of logical thought. That logical thought can help us come to inferences that are well organized, analyzed, rigorous and methodical. And that these inferences draw from the idea of empiricism, that is, they are coming from observable facts in the world. This allows a new understanding of nature to emerge, that nature is also something that we can measure and that we can come to an analysis through elegant mathematical propositions. These are radical ideas. These are these are challenging what was the status quo. These are challenging the authority of the church. These are challenging the divinely ordained status of monarchs. So huge upheavals in the way humans think of themselves and the social world that they inhabit. I put up a timeline for you to get a sense of what is being written around the time, what are the kinds of discoveries or discussions that are contributing to this shift in the social or the emergence of the social, as I argued at the beginning of the class. So 1517, we see the Protestant Reformation that challenged the authority of the church, with Martin Luther pinning his 95 Theses on the door of the church. We will talk more about this when we talk about Max Weber in our future classes. In 1599, Francis Bacon publishes his essays, bringing out questions on what is truth, what is morality, what is ethics, what is a good life. Now, these questions become prominent around this time because morality and ethics are not something that is just given by the church. This is something that we, using our reason, can deliberate amongst ourselves and come to some sort of an understanding. 1633, Galileo's trial, wherein he had challenged that the idea that Earth is the center around which the sun revolves, and he was at that time forced to resign his views, but a very, very significant moment in the history of ideas. 1637, René Descartes tells us, I think, therefore I am. Very important idea in trying to understand who we are and the notion of the individual emerging. 1687, Newton's Principia Mathematica, the idea that we can measure the world, that through elegant mathematical propositions we can explain the world, and that these things are knowable and understandable. They are not mysterious, something out there beyond our control. 1689, John Locke text on civil government, and apart from that, several other texts from John Locke, again emphasizing human reason, emphasizing the role of the government. John Locke is very important in several different ways because he argues that because human beings can reason, they have certain inalienable rights that cannot be taken away by any monarch or any church, and one of those rights, in fact, he argues is property. So there's life, liberty, and property. So the idea of private property starts to emerge, and we will see through the classes how that plays out in the history of capitalism and how that transformed society. So it's not just the realm of ideas that is changing, it is also a material realm that is changing along with these ideas. John Locke is also kind of seen as somebody that brought forth the ideas of liberal enlightenment thought. Then Voltaire talks about human interest, self-interest, and how this self-interest then relates to the role of the government and the state. Between Locke, Voltaire, and Rousseau, we see the idea of the social contract, where even when individuals work in self-interest, and that most of the time they do, what emerges through negotiation, through the process of coming together, is a well-being of humanity as a whole, and that through a social contract we make a contract with the others in the community and with what might emerge as the state, where the state is vested with the authority on our behalf, and we vest authority in the state to be able to take care of the well-being of the particular community. Now, this is a very important idea, because it is through the citizens, through the collective, through the community, that the state then gets its authority, not through a God-given or a divinely ordained, already established practice. And therefore, if the state itself gets its authority from the people, then ideas that the American Revolution shows us, that it is we the people. Even in the Indian Constitution, our preamble starts with we the people. We the people of India give to ourselves this constitution. So it is us the people that vest authority into the government, right? So this is a very powerful idea that emerges around this time. This means that hierarchies are not something that you are born with, that they are not always static, can be questioned, can be analyzed, and can be changed through human intervention. Here in this painting you see Lady Liberty leading the people, and then in this particular painting you see the storming of the Bastille from the French Revolution, where once the idea is established that it is through human intervention that changes can come in the social sphere, the people, it is the masses in this case that revolt against the feudal system, and in the French Revolution the rights of the feudal lords and the privileges of the feudal lords are taken away, and a form of democracy emerges. You see that both in the United States and in the French Revolution, and what that means again is that the idea of each individual human having certain inalienable rights to life, liberty, also private property, become central to the way we think, and central to the way we relate to each other. And so you see how social is emerging as something that is studyable, that is, that can be analyzed. Now, in the 19th century, we see the Industrial Revolution, and that becomes the context in which a lot of sociological thinkers begin to offer their analysis of what had emerged as the social. The Industrial Revolution was a period of immense transformation. In fact, it is referred to as the Great Transformation. This is also the title of Karl Polanyi's very important book. And the kind of transformation, so feudalism is has been challenged. People are moving from rural areas into urban areas. The idea of wage labor has emerged. There is immense urbanization, and this is also a period of all the colonies emerging, and that of increased mobility, both from people moving from rural areas to urban areas, and alongside that a lot of traditional social patterns or social relations are breaking. Also traditional structures that actually are both exploitative but also supportive are being challenged. There is immense exploitation, as Marx will show us when we come to his writings. The factories are emerging, people from different parts of the rural hinterland are coming together here. These large factories and the state, lot of things need to be administered, and so large bureaucracies are emerging, and people are torn away from what was established communal structures. So individualism is again being emphasized. What is that doing? Well, that is creating a unsettlement in society. There are both there are strengths of it, but what is also evident is the intense exploitation. There is an exchange of ideas that happens when people move across their habitual terrains, And so they start to see that there are other ways of being, there are other ways of thinking, there are other ways of organizing society. And this also opens up the Pandora's box of what social structures could mean. And so it becomes a time which is ready for the social to emerge as something that can be analyzed, questioned, and therefore changed. Here again, I have a timeline for you where I want us to look at 1776, the Declaration of American Independence, the idea of we the people coming in. 1776, Adam Smith writes Wealth of Nations. Here he emphasizes the idea of human self-interest and how individual self-interest can actually lead to a community's well-being. Many terms that we will be using in this course that Marx also talks about emerge with the writing of Adam Smith and others. Notions of labor, human labor is central to all this. The idea, John Locke also talks about this, that human labor is something that we own, our own labor, right? That is one thing that we own. Nobody can take that away from us, my own labor. And then when I invest my labor in land, then that land can be something, the product of the fruits of my labor are mine to claim. So ideas of ownership of property, ideas of labor, what people are also fascinated by the idea of what brings in value to something. So the notion of value emerges. We will see that much more when we study Karl Marx. So the vocabulary for studying social theory is emerging. 1789, the fall of the Bastille, where the underprivileged masses take over, and there is the abolition of feudal rights and privileges in France. 1792, very important, Mary Wollstonecraft writes The Vindication of the Rights of the Women. And here she's using the same ideas, the inalienable rights of life and liberty, to talk about women's rights and the idea that women should also have access to education. Although what she also does is that she looks at it in the context of that if you educate women, then it would also contribute towards children's upbringing. So it's still very much entrenched in the division of labor, but a very, very progressive idea of its time. 1796 is when the freedom of press is established in France. A very significant development that we can have because it also is one of the inalienable rights, that we can have freedom of speech and without fear of being called in by the church like Galileo was and be asked to resign one's views. Jeremy Bentham brings in talks about utilitarianism, and he also is bringing into us notions of what it means to work together with a community. So again, expanding on ideas of the social. I put in Tocqueville and Martineau, Alexis Tocqueville and Harriet Martineau here, to show one very significant difference in the way the physical sciences work and then social sciences work. A lot of times when we say that sociology or social science uses the scientific method, and I teach this course often to science students and science majors, it is understood that the process of collection, formulation of a theory, design of an experiment, methodological and rigorous experimentation, and a falsifiable analysis or a theory that emerges in the end. It's not quite like that in the social sciences. It's still rigorous, it is still very methodical, and yet there is also an element of subjectivity in the theories that we propose. And why I put in Tocqueville and Martineau is to show that both of them visited the United States, they wrote about the United States in very rigorous ways and very detailed observations. So it was very, very empirical and logical, and yet their perceptions or their analysis were somewhat different from each other. So Tocqueville is taken in by American democracy, he's quite fascinated by it. He's also writing about gendered relations in the United States, and he talks about how he idealizes the American woman as somebody who's rational and logical and yet has given up aspects of her selfhood in order to support the man in her life. So he's idealizing that division of labor in the household, whereas Martineau in Society in America critically looks at American society and asks the question, where are the women in American politics? And she shows how the ideals of American democracy are not fulfilled unless there is representation from all members of the society. It is not until 1839 that Auguste Comte coins the term sociology. So before that, all of these texts that don't necessarily fall into the named scientific discipline of sociology, but are analyzing what is the category social, have been written and form the precursors to the thoughts that proceed from there. But Auguste Comte, he is in fact a mathematician and a philosopher, and he says that he's like there is a lot of progress in the physical sciences, in mathematics, but what we really need now is, and the biological sciences, what we really need now is the emergence of a science that understands society. He in fact creates a kind of a I wouldn't call it a hierarchy, because it's not that one is better than the other, but he places these sciences in a form of a pyramid where he shows that mathematics is the most fundamental, the most basic and the most abstract of the sciences, and then we move up to physics, and then to the other sciences, to biology, and at the top of this is sociology, which he says would draw from mathematics also and the other disciplines below in that pyramid, but is also much more complex. It's very complex and it's not abstract. So he's giving us a sense, but it needs to, he initially in fact calls it positive philosophy, and he is also known for coining the term positivism, where the rigor of empiricism and the logical, rational thought that were so central to the scientific revolution become the foundations upon which the discipline of sociology is to rest, is to, that's to be the basis. I want to read out one quote from Comte's writing, just to give you a flavor or a sense of the way he's arguing. And it's often quite interesting, because when people are writing that far back, this is 1855, then the ways of writing are very different, and you'll see that as we look at other texts. But let's look at and explore this one right now. He writes, "All good intellects have repeated since Bacon's time that there can be no real knowledge but that which is based on observed facts. This is incontestable in our present and advanced age. The first characteristic of the positive philosophy is that it regards all phenomena as subjected to invariable natural laws." One can see how he's drawing from the scientific revolution here. "Our business is to pursue an accurate discovery of these laws with a view to reducing them to the smallest possible number," so mathematics, Our real business is to analyze accurately the circumstances of the phenomena and to connect them by the natural relations of succession and resemblance. Theologians and metaphysicians, and he actually had said that social change has been divided into three phases. So there was things were explained using theology in the first phase, then using metaphysics, which is slightly more abstract in the second phase, but now is the time for positivism, so more empirical kind of evidence. Theologians and metaphysicians may imagine and refine that such questions about the nature of life, but positive philosophy rejects them. Now that the human mind has grasped celestial, astronomy and terrestrial physics, that is physics, chemistry and physiology, there remains one science to fill up the series of sciences of observation: social physics. He variously calls it social physics, positive philosophy, and also then sociology. This is what men, he uses the word men, it's of his times, this is what men have now most need of. So I will end today's class here and see you in the next class. Thank you.